Hello everyone and welcome to round 4 of the US Chess Championship 2021. This is the most awaited clash and the one that you guys requested the most. It's Wesley versus Fabiano Caruana, and even though this game probably did not live up to its full potential, you guys are here to help rectify that. So without further ado, let's check it out as Wesley has the white pieces and he opens with d4. We have knight to f6 by Fabi, c4, e6, knight to c3 and bishop to b4. Fabi goes for the Nimzo-Indian defense, and Wesley replies with the classical variation, and that is queen to c2, putting more pressure on the e4 square, so you have support for advancing your e4 pawn if needed, but also if black captures on c3, as one usually does in the Nimzo-Indian, you don't have to capture with the b pawn, you could also capture with the queen. So here Fabi castles and Wesley goes a3, challenging the bishop on b4, bishop captures on c3, queen captures now, and d6. And here knight to f3, just nicely continuing development. And usually the mostly played moves here are b6, preparing to fianchetto your light square bishop, or knight b to d7. But Fabi plays rook to e8, which is a very rare move, and obviously he prepared something very special for Wesley. Wesley continues with b4, grabs more space on the queen side. This does, like we said, expand on the queen side, but it keeps the king in the center for a little bit longer, which could be dangerous against the Nimzo-Indian. But here you can see it's a very timid setup. It's not a very aggressive one. And now e5 here right away, as you made sure the rook is on e8, and also knight b to d7 are known moves, but the move Fabi plays is a new move, so already as of move 8 we have a completely new game. Fabi plays a5, challenges the b4 pawn, and now you have to be careful. If pawn captures, queen captures, you cannot capture with your a pawn, otherwise the rook hangs, you would mess up your pawn structure. So of course here Wesley plays bishop to b2, now you will be able to capture back with your pawn, a captures on b4, a captures on b4, and now rook captures on a1. With check we have bishop captures by Wesley, and now b5. So this is the preparation probably Fabi had for this game. Of course it goes way beyond that, but it's very wild. It gives up a pawn already on move 11, and you want to mess up white's pawn structure. So it definitely makes sense. Later on, you can blockade the doubled pawns with knight to d7 and knight to v6, and then continue from there. So Wesley says, all right, not accepting this pawn, for example, c5, bishop b7 could be a little bit dangerous. I'm not really doing anything here. So I'm going to accept the pawn and see what you had in mind. So here, c captures on b5 by Wesley, and now knight b to d7. We have e3, Wesley wants to develop his light square bishop, castle to safety, and now knight to b6. Now both of the knights are nicely guarding that d5 square, and the knight is an excellent blockading piece, for example, when you want to blockade doubled pawns, because there's no a pawn or c pawn to dislodge this knight. We have bishop to d3, a very aggressive approach, also bishop to e2. Might be possible, but Fabi just plays bishop to b7, and he says, since your bishop is not on e2, I will very gladly capture this knight on f3. Wesley says, be my guest, I'm not worried about that. He castles, and Fabi captures it. This definitely makes sense. It's an incredibly strong piece, but it's very difficult to ruin white's king side by capturing on f3. So Fabi captures it, g captures, and now knight f to d5, attacking the queen, putting more pressure here on the central pawn, and also maybe preparing ideas like f5, e5. The queen might be coming into the game. Also, if e5 is played, maybe rook here, rook to h6. So those are Fabi's ideas. We have queen to b3, sidestepping this, and now queen to h4. The main idea here is, do you play f5 or not? Because of course you want to block this light square bishop. Wesley has the bishop pair, and it's an incredibly strong bishop pair, but for the moment it's not doing all that much after a move like f5 is played. But it's a very committal move. The queen now has control of this wonderful diagonal. If the knight ever moves, you can even capture here since the pawn is pinned. So it's very tricky on how you would actually get your pieces into the attack. If you go something like queen here, bring the rook here, that's a lot of moves. So Fabi for the moment waits with the f5 push. He plays queen to h4, and now comes king to g2 by Wesley. This is a move you want to remember for when your king side is busted. You want to play king to g2, bring the rook behind the king, and then sort of artificially castle backwards to safety, sort of king to f1, king to e2, and then use the semi-open g file for your attack. And now, once again, Fabi is asking himself whether f5 is the right approach here. Do I wait with f5? And he decides to push e5 instead. Now, what do you plan on doing here? Well, it's a very complicated position, and we are almost at the point where the position becomes incredibly interesting. Here, d captures on e5 is played. Why not? Of course, you want to open up this diagonal for your dark square bishop. And here, Fabi played rook to e6, and this is a very, very brave by Fabi, sacrificing another pawn. Wesley is now up 2 pawns, and now he wants to bring his rook into the attack. But the position is now actually lost for Fabi. But it's such a complicated idea that well, not everyone would find it, as you'll see in the game. But you guys are comfortable in your own homes. I imagine it's a very nice Sunday. So feel free to pause the video here and try to figure out how can Wesley make incredible progress here while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on figuring out it's Adolf Andersen's move. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook to d1. That's the move you had to find. This move was not played in the game, and this is the move we are going to discuss. Just to give you an example, of course, the idea is we want to free up our f1 square so the king can go to safety, because the king isn't very safe on the king side anymore. And also, if you try something like rook to g1, which seems even better, as you know, this position might open up. Not really, because after d captures on e5, you're not really opening up this diagonal any longer. And if king to f1 running to safety, we can even play queen captures on h2. And now, after a move like f4, we want to open up this diagonal. Queen to h3 check, for example, king to e1, and now even knight captures on e3. So there are ideas like this in the position, and the white wouldn't be very happy here, especially if you capture. For example, queen captures here, attacks the rook, you have to guard the rook, captures on f4, king e1, queen e3 check, and again, if you guard the rook, rook f6 check, and that's it. You're just getting checkmated here. King wherever, rook to h6 will be checkmate. So it's important that you move the rook here, and now the idea is that our king will be very safe on e2, and we actually want to attack in the center and on the queen side. Now, once the bishop moves, there will be a nice attack on this knight here. And another thing, to figure out rook to d1, you have to find the next move. For example, d captures on e5. What do you play now? Bishop to e4. And bishop to e4 is the star move of this variation, because after bishop to e4, black is completely helpless. There is no attack here. There is nothing you can do. Your knight is hanging here. Obviously, we have to take care of that. So let's say knight f6. We go after the bishop. Not a problem. Rook to d8 check. And now, what do? If you block with the rook, then it's too easy for white. Queen to d3, and that's pressure you're not getting rid of. So knight to d8, a little bit better for black, but still, we're just going to play queen to d3, and there is no attack here. There's nothing here for black. King f1 to e2 solves all of your problems, and there's nothing you can do. For example, king f8, we want to add a defender here. Bishop to c6 is coming. And now, again, what do you play here? It's very hard to even find a move, because there is no attack here for black, and the black is banking in everything here on the attack happening on the king's side. So here you would probably have to offer a queen trade, and let's say after captures, now we have this f4 move. That's the good stuff. So of course, if you capture, the bishop is coming to c5, then to d4, then to c5, and then it's just game over. For example, if you capture on f4, we're going to play bishop to d4. Now you have to make some room for the king. Bishop to c5 check, but it still doesn't help. If you move the king, we just pick up the knight, and if you play knight to d6, then the point is now the doubled b pawn becomes the star of the show. Bishop captures on d6, and you have to capture with the pawn, otherwise we just win a piece. So you're going to gonna have to capture with the pawn now, b6, and now the pass pawn wins the game easily. So that's what you would face here after this f4 move. So you can't really capture. You might as well play something like f6, but now we're just gonna play bishop to c3. And now when evaluating this position, you can see that the white king is very active, the black king has no activity, it doesn't really have any moves. You can't really push any pawns, capture anything, and it's just really, really bad. So what you're asking yourself here is the bishop pair that Wesley has better than the knight pair that Fabi has? And obviously it's much, much better. So this would be easily winning for Fabi. However, after Fabi's for Wesley, however, after Fabi's rook to e6 move, it's really a lot to consider, because first you have to realize that the king will be safe here, and you have to realize that king f1 to e2 followed by bishop to e4, and then your position is simply untouchable. This bishop to e4 is such a star move because you can even play bishop to e4, you can play f4, and then the bishop covers the g2 and the h1 square, so you can really just play anything here. So just rook to d1 and just everything works. It's just amazing. The captures, it's such a fine position that it's very hard to, you know, there's nothing you can do here. Like everything works in this position. However, after rook to e6, Fabi just played e captures on d6 is what Wesley played, and now it's much easier for Fabi to, you know, consolidate in this position. This move also has merit. It really opens up the bishop pair, but there is simply no time to activate it, because now, of course, I don't even have to tell you what Fabi's move was. Fabi played queen to g5 check, and now our rook on f1 that in the variation that we discussed was on d1 makes it very problematic for the white king to escape. So king to h1 was played, now queen to h5 by Fabi, going after the f3 pawn, and there's no way for Wesley to gain the advantage that could have been gained in the previous line. So he simply played queen to b2, he threatened checkmate, but now queen captures on f3 with check, king g1, and here after queen to g4 check, king h1, queen f3 check, king to g1, queen g4 check, king to h1, and queen f3 check. We have a draw by threefold repetition. Even though it's below 30 moves, of course, threefold repetition seals the game. So really a nice gambit by Fabi, going for that really crazy line with the pawn sacrifice and then with the other pawn sacrifice. But had Wesley found that rook to d1 move, it would be of course completely winning in the hands of a player like Wesley. So that's the game. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So after this draw, neither of them can you know, clinch that first place in sole lead just yet, but someone else has done it, and we're gonna discuss that in the next video. But yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I would like to wish a very happy birthday to Natalia. Hope you have a great day filled with chess and joy. And also I would like to thank Olgo the Dinosaur, David Kimura, Ravindra Yoglekar, and Birnal Tapa for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check two of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the US Chess Championship, checking up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your Sunday.